I remember you and I had a conversation,
Right.
and I was like, I think this is going to totally change you. I also remember you saying you weren't going to do any work when you were there, too.
I tried not to. I moved to Paris, and we had this apartment that we really liked, and every morning I left the apartment and I walked looking for a story. I walked all over Paris. I walked. I went to different neighborhoods, and there was something in me saying there's a story out there somewhere. But it turned out that the story was in the building. My concierge, my gardienne, she had this little dog named Diva, and I noticed that she was having this relationship with this alley cat, this big, tough alley cat. I woke up in the morning and went to get my bread, and on the front step of our building was a little dead mouse, and I realized that the cat had goofed up in his relationship. And so this was his offering to say, look, I'm really sorry, take this mouse. I have the story at this point, at least I knew. I like the city, I like exploring, I have the dead mouse. I know that there's a very, very little dog and there's a very, very big cat and that they have this complex relationship. So I started sketching, I started saying, well, what is this gonna look like? And every time I sketched, it didn't feel real. It was too silly, it wasn't authentic enough, it didn't have the heart. And I remember saying, you know, man, I wish I could draw like Tony DiTerlizzi, because then he would look right. And my wife, as always, she knows what to say. She's like, well, you know who draws like Tony DiTerlizzi? Tony DiTerlizzi.
Oh.
So that's when I called you up, and I remember that. We were still in Paris, and the story wasn't even written yet. I just had to know that it was be treated with a certain type of respect and a certain type of kindness that your line has. And so I called you up, and when you decided that this was something that you wanted to be involved with, it allowed me to finish writing the story.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
I had spent a lot of time in Europe. My family is from Europe. I knew France. I spoke French.
Yeah.
And you now come to Paris after you've decided to do this story. You come for the first time.
Yeah.
And you see things that I haven't seen. You see colors. You discover it in a way that is really, really new.
I needed to find that green. I remember I was just so set. There's a certain green, and it's like a patina. It's like the entire city is patinaed in this beautiful, rich green. And when I found it at the art supply store, Senier, am I saying it? Yeah, where all these famous artists had gone and they ground the pigment, and I saw it in a container. And I remember taking a photo, I'm like, that's the green, I found the green.
One of the things when you're writing about animals or something like that, you're making types, you know, they're specific, but they're still catty and doggy and whatnot. Yeah. And they become, with the illustrations, caricatures.
Diva is she's very fluffy, but she is, if you look at her closely, she's ratty actually in parts. She's a little frayed in places because her character is like that. She's neurotic. She'd be the person picking her nails all the time, that kind of thing. But then she has this veneer with this big, beautiful bow, like I'm pretty. And
Flea has nothing, because Flea has nothing.
Actually, the early sketches had Flea with a kerchief on, and you were like, I think you could lose it. I don't want that humans have touched him.
If you are feral, you're feral.
Yes.
If you have a home, you have a home, and then let that contrast be big.
I think that challenge forced me to find, well, what does he wear? And then I'm like, he wears scars. He wears, tatters. His ears are tattered. I went and looked for other things that would define
his tail
him.
has a little
that kink in the tail that got caught in the door or something. You know, they slammed the door on his tail at one point.
One of my favorite illustrations in the book, it is Flea escaping a butcher with a piece of salami in his mouth. What a great charcuterie. It's got some great details, but it also has this broom that somebody is wielding, and that becomes a major plot point later on. And the broom would not have existed if I had just given my manuscript to an illustrator. You were the one who saw that there was something missing in Flea's story, and then we were able to find places for this broom to make it more personal for Flea and to allow Diva to be brave in a way that she hadn't been before. And when it comes to collaboration, whenever I see that drawing of that broom, I'm like, that's the thing that wouldn't have been there.
As an illustrator, you have to get under the skin of these characters. You have to understand them. How else can you draw them?
You didn't just do that with our lead characters. You did that with Diva's building. You know, you truncate it, you make it feel realistic, but it still is a light cartoon. There's still a point of entry in terms of the art.
I thought, well, what if we show the gargoyle from Notre Dame, like right from the beginning? So he's a little comical, but he's also could be construed a little grotesque, a little scary.
And that is as far away from the home as Diva could even imagine. She couldn't even imagine that would exist.
And then here, so it starts that way at the beginning, and then we kind of reprise it like a coda at the end of the book with her just right next to him. Are you more a diva or are you more a flea?
The idea of flea resonates. I've been lucky enough to travel a lot, and I've been lucky enough to see a lot of things, but I was late in understanding the importance of home. I was late in seeing what I missed in those sort of things. So it is a very sort of personal journey.
Yeah.
And Flea is brave, but he's pretend brave a lot.
Yeah.
And I feel like I am brave in that way as well.
Yeah.
And there are moments where you have to be brave because you said you were going to be brave, but you aren't really brave.
That's right.
Flea always wants a new adventure. Every day he's looking for a new adventure, and he doesn't care where he finds it. It doesn't have to be a big adventure, it just has to be a new adventure.
Yeah.
And I aspire to that flea-ness, if that makes any sense.
I have to ask you this. This is in the manuscript. I know I'm not going to pronounce it correctly. Flaneur?
Flaneur. But you know what? There's no wrong way to pronounce it here, at least.
Yes.
A flaneur is somebody who walks with no direction. It's a form of discovery, and it's a very French thing, but I think it's a very human thing. The idea that you say, I'm going to take a walk, and when you get to a corner, you don't know if you're going to take a right or a left. And in Paris, the streets are all triangles. It's not like New York where it's a grid where you realize you're going north or south. You can easily get lost.
Yeah.
The way to discover something by being a flaneur is to not know where you're going.
Right.
And there's a great joy in that. And it's not unlike writing, or it's not unlike illustrating, where you know that you're going to spend a certain time going along a road, but you don't know where that road is going to lead
Ultimately take you. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. As a child, I think that sense of wandering and exploration is so rich. When we get older, it's hard, we have to consciously do it.
I think when you're a kid, you tell yourself your story, you don't know what the end is going to be. When you're playing pretend, you just begin.
Yeah.
There's going to be a hero, and he has a sword, and then it just goes, and suddenly an elephant shows up, or something else happens, and then it becomes silly. So it is almost like a physical way of dreaming.
It's great that it takes place in Paris, obviously. It's a beautiful city. But it could have taken place in any neighborhood. I mean, to me, that's definitely what drew me into the story, that it has more of a universality.
Right. And here's the thing. All of the stuff that we've been talking about, all of the details, all of the thought, you don't want to feel it in the story. It has to be deep in the story. The story just has to be fun. Yeah. And all the other work that we've done is great. You have to do it. But please don't notice it. No. Just enjoy the romp.
Yeah. It was great. It was great having a romp with you.
It's a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for letting me flaneur with you.
That's great. And you're picking up the tab.
Again?